before we delve into what could be the implications, what does it mean, this whole SARS inquiry process? Just to clarify, what we're talking about in our introduction there, it's the disciplinary process. There is still the Judge Nugent SARS inquiry, which should resume later this month.
Correct. I think we must be very clear. There are two processes currently underway. One being the SARS inquiry, which has been instructed by the President, which talks purely to the governance and leadership around the SARS and its leadership in its entirety, and the disciplinary process, which is directly attributed to Mr. Moyane and the questions that he needs to answer.
Now, that's what he's submitting the responses on today. Now, what does this all mean? I mean, because SARS is a very important institution in the country.
I think we must take a step back. If we look at why SARS is important, we must remember that we need to answer the question on why we need a very strong collection agency. At the end of the day, our budget is made up of two components, revenue and debt. SARS is critically important in terms of us collecting that revenue so that we can spend our money in terms of the budget of the country. So SARS needs to play a critical role in terms of being able to collect it, and we need to trust SARS that they can collect that. And ultimately, that's the importance of this inquiry. It's about saying, do we have a collection agency that works effectively and efficiently?
Now, just looking at the Commission of Inquiry into SARS, that's the bigger one, that's the Nugent inquiry. Now, Tom Moyane, very concerned that this commission is looking solely at him. Just explain for us the dynamics around that. I mean, what would he expect? Who else must we look into? Or, you know, what would be the sort of focus, and why would it be solely on him?
Well, I think from Mr. Moyane's perspective, both inquiries talk to leadership. Leadership in his personal capacity, and that's in the disciplinary inquiry. And if you look at the broad terms of reference of the SARS inquiry, ultimately it's about leadership. So I can imagine from Mr. Moyane's perspective that he feels that both of these areas are specifically looking at him in an isolated perspective. So I understand that that's probably where Mr. Moyane sits in terms of why he's asking the questions around why are the two inquiries currently under play.
And maybe in those substantive responses today that Advocate Bham has asked him and his lawyers to submit, it will be clear about how Mr. Moyane views the process going forward. Now, it's important, if you talk about leadership, that you then understand that it will go to issues of governance, and that's where the President is coming in to say that he believes that SARS needs to have a strong governance culture, and that maybe under Mr. Moyane's leadership that was not there according to the charges that have been put.
Correct. And I think if you look at SARS, we've had 5 commissioners in the last 9 years. That's the facts. I mean, in acting and fixed capacity. There's been lots of leadership that have left SARS, senior leadership who have got the right technical skills and capacity to lead the organization. So obviously there'd be questions to be answered, and I think that's essentially what the President is looking for, is to answer those questions and bring the facts out into the public.
And I think just looking, Justin, at when Tom Moyane took over SARS, and just looking at the people who'd been there before that, like you say, the commissioners have changed, but we had a whole host like the Ivan Pillais and even the Adrian Lacaze. They'd been there for so long in SARS that all of them couldn't actually seem to work with this person. And when it comes to leadership, I mean, just your thoughts, the overall state of SARS since he took over.
Well, let me comment in terms of SARS. I don't work for SARS. So
as an observer.
As an observer, I think the reality is that when you have an organization which was the darling of the world, it was the darling of South Africa, and you've got an outflow of skilled talent, it tells you that there's something fundamentally wrong. The fact that there's so much information out there in the public that needs to be answered to tells you that there's definitely questions that Mr. Moyane needs to answer, and ultimately we as the public need those answers so that we can build our trust, because effectively this is really just a breakdown in trust. It's a relationship that we've all had, and we need to now know that we're confident in SARS and the organization.